Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs, ready to slide into the weekend like an ICE agent on a slippery sidewalk. Graceful. Let's do this. And we begin in the U.S. House of Representatives, where lawmakers rubber-stamped months of constitutional abuses, kidnappings, and killings by ICE agents around the country by giving the agency more money. In a 220 to 207 vote, the House approved of a spending bill for the Department of Homeland Security, which was slated to run out of funding at the end of the month. In the end, 7 Democrats joined almost every single Republican to advance the ICE measure to the Senate. The 7 Democrats were Reps Don Davis, Laura Gillen, Jared Golden, Vicente Gonzalez, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, Tom Suozzi, and Henry Cuellar, who recently received a pardon from President Trump to avoid a corruption prosecution. Democratic leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, chose not to whip his members to vote no. The message from Congress to residents of Minnesota who've been dealing with marauding ICE agents terrorizing their communities: you're on your own. And you know what? That's fine, because on their own, Minnesotans have organized a day of mass protests and a general strike to force ICE out of the state. Dubbed ICE Out of Minnesota, Day of Truth and Freedom, it's all going down right now. Hundreds of businesses, scores of unions, and tens of thousands of working people are taking to the streets to protest the federal occupation of their state. There are also solidarity rallies happening around the country. Ahead of today's actions, President Trump's FBI took a break from protecting pedophiles to instead arrest some peaceful protesters in Minnesota. The DOJ took into custody 3 people in connection with a protest that took place at a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. The church was targeted because it employs a priest who also works as a senior official within ICE. It was an entirely peaceful protest. No damage was done to the church. But on Thursday, the FBI arrested 2 organizers of the protest, Nakima Levy Armstrong and Chantil Louisa. A third person involved in the protest, William Kelly, was also arrested. They were charged under a federal law that prohibits people from blocking access to abortion clinics or houses of worship. In public statements, DOJ officials accused the protesters of attacking Christianity. Attorney General Pam Bondi said, quote, "The intimidation of Christians are being met with the full force of federal law." You might remember that over Christmas, Trump bombed Nigeria, claiming Christians are under attack there too, even though they weren't. Also, one of the arrested protesters, Armstrong, is a Christian preacher herself. In addition to the arrests, the administration tried to humiliate the protesters. The official White House Twitter account posted pictures of each individual getting arrested, essentially declaring them guilty in compromising their rights to a fair trial. In the case of Armstrong, the White House actually posted a digitally altered photo of her arrest, darkening her skin and making it look like she's sobbing. As you can see from the original arrest photo, Armstrong was not crying, but calm and collected. When asked about the alterations to the image, the White House told reporters the memes will continue. Real sick stuff. Attorney General Pam Bondi also tried to arrest former CNN anchor Don Lemon, who was covering the church protest as a journalist. However, a federal magistrate judge refused to sign off on the warrant, which reportedly enraged Bondi. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon posted on Twitter that the department will keep trying to arrest him. It's 2026, and Don Lemon is on the verge of being a political prisoner in America, if anyone's wondering how things are going. All right, moving on to Davos, where President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, gave a presentation on how capitalists plan to exploit the genocide in Gaza. Kushner is a close ally of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a member of the so-called Board of Peace, the technocratic government of billionaires and war criminals who will oversee reconstruction in Gaza. During his remarks at Davos, Kushner shared PowerPoint slides depicting new development projects in the enclave, a $25 billion master plan to turn Gaza into a tourist trap.
85% of the GDP of Gaza has been aid for a long time. That's not sustainable. It doesn't give these people dignity. It doesn't give them hope. And so we want to use free market economy principles. A lot of what President Trump spoke about that he's doing in America, we want to bring the same mindset, the same approach to a place like Gaza.
The slides outline entire new cities to be built from scratch called New Gaza and New Rafah. AI-generated images show futuristic skyscrapers, transportation hubs, and residential areas. There are plans to build a new airport in Gaza after the first one was destroyed by the Israeli military more than 20 years ago. Looking closer at the plans, though, developers envision Gaza as a tourist destination. The coastline will be filled with 180 skyscrapers and hotels for those tourists and other wealthy elite. Meanwhile, Palestinians will be forced inland into residential zones or worker housing. They're the cheap labor force for the extraction capitalists. That's assuming Palestinians are even a part of these future plans. Kushner did not address what happens to the million-plus people who've lost their homes and livelihoods during the genocidal war. How will they be compensated? Where will they live? Kushner claimed Gaza will achieve 100% full employment and that he hopes construction will be finished in 2 to 3 years. Mind you, Gaza is currently a pile of rubble with likely thousands of bodies still buried beneath it. Also, the Israeli military still occupies about half the enclave and is still killing Palestinians at a high clip in violation of the ceasefire agreement. But Kushner told the elite gathered at Davos that Gaza now offers, quote, amazing investment opportunities. The U.S. defense industry profited off the bombs and weapons that turned Gaza into dust and ethnically cleansed the population. And now U.S. real estate developers and extraction industries will profit off the reconstruction. Gotta say, Khomeini was really cooking when he called the U.S. the Great Satan. And finally, Trump is doing that thing again where he talks about doing some populist reform to help working class people, but never actually intends to follow up on it. This time it's related to making homes more affordable. Trump said on his social media site this week, he signed an executive order to stop large institutional investors on Wall Street from buying up single-family homes. The order says, quote, people live in homes, not corporations. My administration will take decisive action to stop Wall Street from treating America's neighborhoods like a trading floor and empower American families to own their own homes. It is true the president has identified a problem here. Large real estate trusts and private equity firms are increasingly buying up homes and adding them to their portfolio of investments. Companies like Blackstone and Invitation Homes own hundreds of thousands of properties. About 3% of the housing stock in the U.S. is now in the hands of these large institutional investors. In some markets in Florida and Arizona, though, they own up to a quarter of all homes. And they can use cash to force out other bidders, making it harder for regular families to buy the house they want, and increasing the price of homes across the board. Trump's executive order here is scant on details. So far, it would not require these institutional investors to sell off the single-family homes they have already acquired, about 450,000 properties. There's legislation in the Senate introduced by Ed Markey that would do that. It has not been endorsed by the White House. The order directs the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, to do most of the lifting on how this will work. Bessent is tasked with defining what exactly a large institutional investor is and what constitutes a single-family home for the purpose of this regulation. Bessent is a billionaire whose approach to these things might be skewed by his class position. For example, here he was at Davos speaking on the topic with Fox Business.
Institutional investors hoovered up single-family homes. They continue to do it. We think that it is a good idea to have them out of the market. We are going to give guidance at some point to see what is a mom and pop. That someone, maybe your parents for their retirement, about 5, 10, 12 homes. So we don't want to push the mom and pops out.
Yes, of course. We have to protect those mom and pop landlords who own 12 homes. Can't do anything to make homes more affordable if it harms the people who already own 12 of them. Ask the average person how many homes is the appropriate amount to own, and they'll tell you 1. Maybe 2 if you're rich. Not 12. If you own 12 homes, you're just as bad as Blackstone. The second biggest share of homeowners in the US, behind people who own one and live in it, are those so-called mom and pop landlords, people who own between 1 and 9 houses. There's a way bigger chunk of those people hoarding housing stock than institutional investors. And they're going to have to take a hit if the goal is to make housing more affordable for everyone. This administration is not willing to do that, though, because most of those landlords are Trump voters. Another way to immediately bring down the cost of housing is to stop landlords from colluding with each other on what to charge for rent. A number of apps have popped up allowing landlords to connect with each other and share pricing information. The Department of Justice under President Biden brought legal action against several of these companies offering these tools. But Trump's Justice Department has since settled most of those cases, with the companies not required to admit any wrongdoing or pay any financial penalties. Oh boy, here we go again. Lots of strong contenders for this week's Rich Dick. There's Jared Kushner and his dystopian plans for Gaza. And there's also Elon Musk. A report from the New York Times and the Center for Countering Digital Hate estimated that Musk's AI chatbot Grok posted on Twitter millions of sexualized images of women in the span of like a week. That included over 23,000 sexualized images of children. This avalanche of deepfakes happened because Musk programmed Grok to allow it to respond to users' requests on Twitter to alter pictures that women posted on the site. That feature was locked down to just paid users shortly after. How has Twitter not been shut down over this yet? And how has Musk not been hounded out of society yet? He could be the rich dick every single goddamn week we do this. But in the interest of mixing things up, we're going to go in a different direction for today's show. Instead, this week's rich dick is USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins. President Trump's economic policies are not improving conditions for working people. Over the last year, food prices continue to rise, up 2.4%, and over 2/3 of people in the U.S. say they're struggling to afford groceries. But the job of Agriculture Secretary Rollins is to convince people that none of that shit is real, that actually the economy is strong, and that food prices are going down, that families aren't really struggling. And she went on News Nation and explained how easy it is to eat healthy and affordable in Trump's economy. Take a look.
especially those who are living on the margins, are we asking them to spend more on their diet? And the answer to that is no. We've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost around $3 a meal for a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, corn tortilla, and one other thing.
That one other thing better be a dang sandwich, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with a piece of chicken and a piece of broccoli. Rollins was ridiculed for her remarks. Her financial disclosures show she made $1 million in compensation as the CEO of the pro-Trump America First Policy Institute before joining the administration. She and her husband have millions more on top of that in investments and bank accounts. And here she is telling struggling working class Americans they should be fine eating a $3 sad plate. Not only once a day, but 3 times a day. Rollins went on TV a few days later with the results of more simulations out of her department. Here's what she had to say.
Between $3 and $4 is a fair number if you can have access to that food. So just about an hour ago, I saw new numbers that were run. A full day, meaning 3 full square meals and a snack, is about $15.64. $15.64. That's all 3 meals and a snack.
That snack better be a pizza. Rollins and her staff are just making shit up. There were no simulations run. The outlet Straight Arrow News, a junk site funded by billionaire Joe Ricketts, tried to throw Rollins a bone by running the math on her claims and found that she's right. You can indeed eat a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a tortilla, and one other thing for less than $3 a plate. In fact, you can do it for 68 cents a plate. But something the outlet couldn't ignore, it would be incredibly unhealthy for you. The chicken, broccoli, and tortilla plate amounts to only about 200 calories, which is 1/10 of the average person's recommended daily calorie intake of 2,000. That's according to the USDA. So Rollins' advice here is to slowly starve yourself. Democratic Senator Ed Markey criticized the Ag Secretary online. Quote, "The Trump administration is completely out of touch with the challenges families are facing. They have no idea how much dinner costs, no interest in actually making groceries affordable, and no clue how to make ends meet." My guess is President Trump has never stepped foot in a grocery store. I mean, he's blown away by the word groceries. It's such a unique concept to him. And based on Rollins' recent comments, she hasn't been shopping in one in a long time either. It's like, once you reach a certain class, you don't go inside grocery stores anymore. You have people who do that for you. And then you end up sounding like Lucille Bluth. But you know what? I'm going to break protocol here, and I'll actually spare the Secretary of Agriculture the dishonors this week if she agrees to do one thing. Just one simple thing. She has to fire the social media staffer who posted that bizarre AI-generated video of scared children guzzling milk. Brooke, you've got a real sicko working for you. Fire him, or her, or whoever the hell it is. Until then, you're this week's Rich Dick. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from California. It was sent in by Jack in San Francisco. Enjoy. Thank you, Jack. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have YouTube and podcast channels, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. Stay safe in the ice storm. I'll see you next week.